CNN's breaking news coverage of the Israel-Hamas truce, now extended by an additional 2 days as more hostages are released. Let's bring in Mark Regev. He's a senior advisor to the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Mark, thanks very much for joining us. These 11 Israeli hostages, first of all, what, if anything, can you tell us about their condition?
So obviously they've just arrived and they go through thorough medical inspections when they arrive. We want to make sure that they're okay. And of course, psychological, we have to see how they are from the point of view of their psychological state after being over 50 days hostages held by Hamas. It can't be easy, especially for the children. We can presume they've gone through a level of trauma.
So the temporary truce has now officially been extended for what, another 2 days, another 48 hours. What's it going to take from Israel's perspective to extend it even more, to keep this truce going?
So there's a cabinet decision from last week which said 4 days as agreed, 4 days at the beginning.
So the first 4 days have now over.
Yes, 50 hostages, that finished tonight. And then it was open-ended in that Israel agrees to the continuation of this special humanitarian pause each day for 10 hostages. So in many ways you could say Hamas is going to decide how long this humanitarian pause lasts for, because as long as they keep releasing hostages 10 a day, the humanitarian pause will continue. So people who want to see the pause continue should be putting pressure on Hamas, continue to release hostages.
CNN has confirmed that there are 9 American hostages still being held by Hamas in Gaza. What's it going to take to get those 9 American hostages out?
That you have to ask Hamas. They're deciding who's coming out. At the moment, the criteria is to give a preferential treatment to children and women for obvious reasons. And I think that will continue for the time being. And I don't know, I remember the Americans talking about there were 2 women amongst the Americans, and so maybe they'll be coming soon. I hope so.
Why do you think only 1 has been released so far?
That you have to ask Hamas.
But do you think there's a political decision on the part of Hamas or anything?
It's very difficult sometimes to read Hamas. The only thing we can say for certain, Wolf, is that they are brutal and they are fanatical. We saw today they released twins, 3-year-olds. What sort of people kidnap 3-year-olds? I mean, you have to be sick. There has to be something wrong with you. And unfortunately, that's the enemy we're dealing with. And you have to have nerves of steel to deal with these people. Every time we get one of these releases, it's like pulling teeth. It's never easy. There are always last-minute issues, always last-minute problems. Hamas is a terribly difficult interlocutor.
Israel's defense minister, Yoav Gallant, and you probably know this, says the military will fight with even stronger force when combat resumes against Hamas. Is there any concern that these sorts of comments could disrupt a continuation of the release of hostages?
On the contrary. When the fear that Hamas has of Israel resuming combat actually is an incentive for them to continue with the pause, because they know that when Israel goes back to the campaign against Hamas, will be destroying their military infrastructure, will be taking out and eliminating their senior leadership, their senior command. They will be on the receiving end of massive blows from the IDF. And that motivates them now to keep this timeout, this humanitarian pause, to go longer. So actually the 2 goals of destroying Hamas militarily and at the same time getting hostages out, they complement each other.
On a different but related matter, there's an increased amount of violence unfolding right now in the West Bank. Israeli settlers are going after Palestinians right now. You've seen all those reports. Very disturbing. President Biden has even complained about what's going on in the West Bank. How concerned are you about this?
The Prime Minister has spoken about this, and he says he opposes 100% any vigilante violence. And he's gone to the settlers themselves, and he said this has to stop. And he said the police and the law enforcement community will bring people who break the law to justice. He says, though, it's important not to blame the entire settlement community. The overwhelming majority are law-abiding, tax-paying citizens. They're good people. There's a small minority who are involved in these activities. No tolerance for them. But, Wolf, if one looks at violence on the West Bank, it's not even matched.
Well,
the terrorist violence,
killed some of them.
But if you look at the terror coming from the Palestinians, and what are we doing today? Unfortunately, you've got Hamas cells across the West Bank. And we've been preempting. We've been arresting people in the middle of the night. We've been taking out Hamas extremists, dealing with the terrorists there to keep the situation calm. And compared to what's going on in Gaza, we're succeeding. We're managing to keep the level of violence in the West Bank low, and that's a good thing.
Let's hope it stays low.
So do I.
Keyword low. Mark Regev, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.